You can't play pretend forever after all. It seems like Bill Maher has finally shed the burden of his media-crafted image to go after the modern far left as a liberal himself. And the issue this time? Well, it's the bitter attacks against RFK Jr.'s wife Cheryl Hines for supporting her husband in his decisions to endorse Donald Trump. But there's an angle to Bill Maher using the far left's own tactics against it that I found particularly amusing. So subscribe to the channel and take a look at what he had to say before I tell you more about it.
The tweet that got the most attention was from actor Bradley Whitford, who wrote, "Hey, Cheryl Hines, way to stay silent while your lunatic husband throws his support behind the adjudicated who brags about stripping women of their fundamental rights. Gutsy. Great example for the kids, profile and courage." Yeah, well, you know what I think is not gutsy? Mansplaining to a woman, but of course not to her face. How she should sacrifice her marriage. Also, you could read something on Twitter that met with your approval. You want to know why I have a bug up my ass about the left more than I used to? It's shit like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Going after the wife, even the mafia doesn't do that. There's a lot of people these days who I call liberals in theory. In theory, they hate bullying. Terrible. In practice, their attitude is, it's not bullying when I stick your head in the toilet.
You couldn't have guessed this coming from Bill Maher even just a few years ago, but perhaps it's safe to say that the last 8 years after the rise of Donald Trump, we've seen a straight wedge drawn between the liberals and the conservatives in America. And that's not just one-sided, because I think if you look at it, there's a second-order fracture that has also happened in the American landscape. It's the Republican base splitting in two camps around whether they resonate with Trump's new MAGA brand of conservatism. And on the other end, it's the far left in the Democratic Party that have distanced themselves from even the moderate wing of the party that Bill Maher has been part of. But now it seems like Bill finds himself in a curious spot. He finds himself far from the left he used to recognize as the political ground from underneath him shifts as the years pass. Apparently, no one such person that seems to have made that jump into the far left is actor Bradley Whitford, who had some pretty crass and unnecessary things to say about RFK Jr.'s wife over her husband endorsing Donald Trump.
A Kennedy in league with a Republican? Why, that's like ordering white wine with Bear. Now look, I like Bobby and always will. And there are things he has been right about that no one else would touch. But yes, I also think he's weird. I couldn't support him for president. His wife is Cheryl Hines, who Larry David was quoted as describing as the best person I've ever met, the one person in Hollywood who doesn't have a single enemy. Well, now she does. Because she didn't throw her husband under the bus when her husband made a decision about something which she's made plain she disagrees with, but that didn't satisfy the obnoxious posers on the aforementioned far left. Thousands tweet screamed at Cheryl things like, "How do you live with yourself? Do better. I can't even enjoy the episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm with you in them anymore. It's no wonder Larry divorced you." Yeah, that's a character on TV, but okay.
And that's a disgrace, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that the liberal left should stand against. Picking on someone's wife for the sake of a political vendetta is one of the lowest moments that you can reach in a political career, and the fact that RFK Jr.'s wife, Cheryl Hines, even has to face this kind of online backlash should tell you just how much of a stifling culture has developed on the modern far left. Even if you look at many of the replies to Cheryl Hines' account on X, it's filled with people taking out their frustration on her apparently not stopping her husband over his politics. It's got things like, "You're a sellout, have fun with your Trump life now." One person wrote, "You and your freak husband are Trump-loving traitors. Enjoy your new life exposed as America-hating fascists." Does any of that sound truly liberal to you? Or does that sound like a mere reflection of the kind of narrow-mindedness we find on the far right? It's a tragedy a celebrated actor like Bradley Whitford would also become part of something like this, rallying other people online to do the same as someone in public light, but it wasn't going to fly so easily this time for Bradley, because RFK Jr. himself came out in defense of his own wife, who has said many times does not support Donald Trump in her personal capacity. RFK Jr. remarked about Bradley Whitford's comments, saying, quote, "I had to suppress some strong feelings about that. It's a template for bullying. Instead of challenging me, he's attacking my wife. Who would do that? What kind of man would do that? Why wouldn't he talk to me directly? And I think he's right. The thing about online bullying of this sort is that it's impossible to say something like that to someone's face without facing immediate pushback, and that has made a lot of people too uncomfortable hiding behind a screen to even pick on someone's wife in the first place. Bill Maher was equally disappointed in Bradley Whitford, and he made it clear in these words.
But it's true. He drives people insane. I get it. And you know what? I used to know Bradley a little bit. He wasn't this guy. And while he may relish writing Cheryl Hines off, I'm not writing him off. Because that's not the way to handle this. President Obama, if you would, one more time, please.
Our fellow citizens deserve the same grace we hope they'll extend to us.
So I get it. Trump makes us crazy. He just does. I found a gray hair myself the other day. And I might need glasses soon. But we have to resist the siren call of being an ass. You don't like Trump, then don't be like him.
That is a great way to put it. Don't become what you hate, and that's something that each one of us needs to be on guard against. It's easy to miss the forest for the trees when you're caught up in your emotions and just end up in the mirror image of what you claim to be fighting against. Perhaps in a political culture where it's as polarized as it is today, that has become easier than ever, but that also means that you need to make more effort to guard against it. Unfortunately for someone like Bradley Whitford, you don't see that in action. He's spoken before in some very partisan terms about Donald Trump and the Republican base, almost to the point of not even seeing them as part of the political process. For example, here's him questioning the very idea that there is such a thing as a rational Republican.
Just for exercise, compare a guy like Hubert Humphrey who spent his whole life fighting for civil rights, who had a real purpose for public life and for public service, with Donald Trump. Here's your easy one. Compare those two guys.
Compare them? I'll tell you, it's the same comparison I feel between Trump and Hillary Clinton. She, as an actor, you think about what is your motivation. Her motivation for her entire professional life has been to speak out for children, for women's rights, civil rights, rights for people in all communities. And Donald Trump, on the other hand, his motivation is, I guess, accumulation of attention and money. I got to say, I always used to joke that the fakest thing, aside from my teeth, about the West Wing was that we had rational Republicans. And one of the things that really upsets me is an election is not a personality contest. It is an opportunity for us to have an important discussion about how to face these tremendously urgent issues. And this rodeo clown has sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And I think it's not good for us.
Example like these tell you why Bill Maher speaks about some people as being liberal in theory, and it's sad because the liberal force in politics is a necessary one without becoming bitter and vindicative. And also going after someone's wife online just because you disagree with their political positions is the last thing that you should ever describe a liberal, let alone an American. Let me know in the comments if you agree with Bill Maher's description of this new strand on the far left, because this is a conversation that the Democratic Party will probably need to have to purge itself of bad actors and elements and remain standing true to the credentials that it defines.